What do you call a company which doesn't really seem to do any business, doesn't seem to earn any money, doesn't seem to even own very much assets, and whose owners we don't even know about? Well, the normal term for something like this would be shell company, maybe shelf company, or in more local parlance, a dabba company. One such entity of this sort is Karanja Infrastructure Private Limited. Now, you might be wondering, why are we telling you about this Karanja Infrastructure Private Limited? You never heard of it, most people haven't, and that's kind of the point. Because this is a company which we found to be involved in India's shadowy private defense sector, providing guarantees for loans which are being provided to a lot of these companies which we have no clue about, but which actually seem to be thriving in the private defense sector, including several of Anil Ambani's Reliance defense companies. Now, again, you might ask, what's the big deal? Why should we care? So let's take you through all the issues with this company. So let's start at the beginning. When you hear about a company, you will hear about its name. What is it that you'd want to know? Well, first things first would be, who does this belong to? But who owns Karanja Infrastructure Private Limited? And that's the first red flag which we come across, because this company is owned by Blackstone Capital Limited, an entity based in Mauritius, which is interesting because normally when you have a foreign company, you're supposed to disclose it in a lot of places, and Karanja Infrastructure Private Limited very conveniently fails to do so. But let's put that aside for a moment. For those of you who know a bit about the international finance world, the name Blackstone probably means quite a bit and would make this a bit of a shock, because they're a big international investment company. They invest in the very largest of companies, or the most strategic investments. So why would they invest in something which we are saying might even be a dabba company? Well, the answer is that they have not. The Blackstone Group has no investment in this company, even though it's pretending to be one of them. So you have Karanja Infrastructure Limited owned by an entity which is pretending to be part of the Blackstone Group, which is based abroad. So that's red flag number one. Red flag number two, what does a company do? Now, you know exactly, you follow the Quint, you know the Quint does news, you know we do digital media. But what about a company which just says we do infrastructure related activities? You'd want to know, what exactly do they do? Do they build bridges? Do they build depots? Do they build military infrastructure? What exactly do they do? And the simple answer of Karanja Infrastructure Private Limited is, we have no clue. Because you won't find anything about them online. You won't find anything really in their own documents. And when you actually try to ask them about their business, as we've tried to do, you don't get any answers. We've tried asking them by going to their registered office, we've asked them by email, we've reached out to their directors, and nobody seems to be willing to tell us what exactly this company does. Now, we found an old share valuation report of theirs which claims that they're developing a free trade warehousing zone near Navi Mumbai, but which is supposed to be approved by the government. But when you actually look at the government's list of approvals, this does not fall anywhere there. Now, you might be thinking, okay, sure, it's not the most transparent company, but what's the big deal? Well, they also take massive unsecured debts and loans from other companies, and then we don't really know what they do, because if we look at all the projects they're working on, we look at their share capital, we look at what they seem to own, none of that comes up to the total amount of the loans which they've taken, which is something like 379.1 crores at this point of time. So what is a company doing with all this money, and where is that money coming from? Again, normally companies would disclose where this kind of investment comes from. Karanja Infrastructure Private Limited does not. If we go back to 2008, we do actually find where a large chunk of these loans seem to have come from. But those companies which supposedly gave the money to them, they don't exist anymore. Or they never existed, and maybe they were instead companies incorporated abroad. We'll never really know, because nobody seems to answer questions about this. And the third sort of really interesting aspect about this company is the way it props up private defense companies. Now, when a company is taking a loan from a bank or from sort of an institutional lender, they normally want to have a security so that in case the company goes belly up, fails to pay the money, they can get someone to cough up what's owed actually to them. Now, for that, normally there are some sort of security has to be provided. Sometimes another company will come and guarantee that loan. And Karanja Infrastructure Private Limited seems to do that for all sorts of private defense companies. And trust me, the names are really weird. There's Fastlane Distriparks, there's Pipavav Offshore Defense and Engineering Limited. And of course, there are now these companies which are now owned by Reliance, by the Reliance Defense Group of Anil Ambani. including Reliance Naval and Engineering. Now, these are companies which pretty much uniformly don't really seem to have a lot going for them. Their finances are very dodgy. Take Reliance Naval and Engineering, for instance, which has been taken to the insolvency court because it's failing to pay back its loans. And yet here we have Karanja Infrastructure sitting on its small little pile of 62 crores worth of assets saying we will guarantee loans worth hundreds of crores for all these companies. It's a bit strange that these banks are even accepting these loans, but there's another question to be asked, that why is Karanja getting involved in these loans in the first place? And again, we are left with no answers because we find documents on the Ministry of Corporate Affairs saying that they are providing these guarantees, but there's no agreement between them and these companies to say why. So why does this matter? Now, India's private defense sector is on the up. The government wants to get them more involved in ensuring defense requirements are met. And guess who's going to be at the heart of all of that? Companies like Reliance, companies like the ones owned by Nikhil Gandhi. When these companies are being supported or are connected to a company like Karanja Infrastructure Private Limited, which is getting money from strange sources or unexplained sources or even illegal sources, or which is propping these companies up even when it really can't, that's putting defense deals in jeopardy. That's putting your taxpayer money in jeopardy. And that's why you should care about it. So let's start asking some more questions about companies like Karanja, and let's start demanding that we get answers about what they do, where they're getting their money from, and why they think they can get away without giving us the answers that we deserve.